Good morning, everyone. I'm going to read a story that I wrote about a young man who lived in a small village and was very courageous. The title of the story is Robbie and the Villager. It takes courage to leave familiar surroundings and explore what is in store for us in other places, or to learn about other cultures and how they live their lives. Also, sometimes we need to move away from our comfort zone into new dimensions. This story is about a little boy who lived in a pristine village with his family. He lived with his mother, father, and two younger siblings in a most unusual village that had a beautiful tropical climate. No pollution, lots of nutritious food grown right there on the land. And surprisingly, there was no internet. Can you imagine? No internet? They had everything they needed right there in the village. The inhabitants in the village all lived well past 100 years old and walked, worked in their gardens, and shared their bounty with other neighbors in the village. Everyone was happy and content. The village only had approximately 500 people living there, so everyone knew each other. They would often have town carnivals where all the neighbors came together for dancing, laughter, and sharing tall tales about a neighboring village. Robbie and his siblings loved every moment of their lives in the village. After all, it was the only life they knew. Robbie had a great imagination and loved to explore while running around in the village. There were lots of hills and many things to explore on the land. He had heard his parents and grandparents talk about a neighboring village nearby, but no one dared to explore the village or to leave their little comfort zone. After all, they had all they needed there right in their village. However, the more Robbie heard about the neighboring village, his curiosity became greater and greater, to the point that he decided one day he would visit the nearby village. Amazingly, it was not an easy task to get to the neighboring village. There was a long, narrow bridge over a small body of water that connected the two villages. To get there, it would take great courage, but Robbie knew in his mind that it was a task that he had to do, especially being the inquisitive little boy that he was. Every night, Robbie would dream about going to the village and discovering what was there. He planned his strategy on how he would get there. He had heard that he would be trotting on a dangerous territory to get there. The elders often told stories about an old man living in the village who was very old. They told stories about him chasing anyone out of his village who attempted to visit. The elders also told stories about wild animals that one might encounter along the trail to get there. no one dared to ever find out what life was like in this little nearby village, to say the least. Interestingly, this did not change Robbie's mind. He knew he had to be courageous and make the trip no matter what he encountered along the way. After much planning and contemplation, Robbie was ready to make the dangerous trip to this little village. After all, he thought, whoever lived there was his neighbor, and so close until he had to see for himself who the inhabitants were and how they lived. So one morning, Robbie packed his lunchbox, an extra pair of clothes, and put on his most comfortable pair of sandals to help keep his footage while crossing the narrow bridge, which was like walking a tightrope. He put everything in his little backpack because he did not want anything heavy to weigh him down. Off he went that morning at dawn before his parents were awake. He had to walk about a mile before arriving at the little bridge. And as he walked, he became braver and braver, telling himself, "I am not afraid. I am strong and full of energy. I know I can navigate my way across that bridge without falling into the body of water. If I encounter a wild animal, I will just make myself big and pretend that I can overtake him." After literally walking for what seemed like a tightrope to cross the little bridge, and crossing safely, Robbie still had about an hour remaining before reaching the little village. So he stopped along the way and sat under a shade tree to eat his peanut butter and jelly sandwich and drink a carton of milk he packed in his lunch pail. At last he reached the village, but saw no one living there. He called out to the top of his voice, "Hello! Is anyone here?" Finally, after calling out at the top of his voice, an old man suddenly appeared. He had a long white beard that almost touched the ground. He was unusually dressed in a tuxedo, which Robbie thought seemed inappropriate for a working man. It was not the everyday attire he was used to seeing his villagers wear on a regular day. Initially, Robbie felt a little bit afraid, but he had to be courageous and find out more about this eccentric person. Finally, after the old man stood up and stared at him for about 5 minutes, he spoke to Robbie. "Son, who are you? Where do you come from? And what business are you seeking here?" the old man interjected. To Robbie's surprise, the old man did not appear unfriendly, as he had heard from his elders for so many years. Robbie stated, "My parents and grandparents have told me stories about you living here for many years, and I wanted to visit you and find out more about what you do and how you live your life." Robbie's questions were, "Do you live here all alone? Do you ever feel lonely here with no one to talk with? The old man's answer was yes and no. His other response was, I can travel anywhere I want in the world while sitting right here in my castle. Come now, my son. I will show you around the castle, and we can fetch something to eat. You look like you could use a nourishing meal. The old man takes Robbie inside, and magically, there is a wonderful meal consisting of all of Robbie's favorite foods and fruit drink. After dinner, the old man tells Robbie his life story. He explains to Robbie that in his past life, he was a famous dancer and traveled around the globe as an entertainer and had practiced martial arts all his life and had become a master to the point that he could travel anywhere in the world in his mind and feel peace and connected to any culture he desired. Therefore, he never felt lonely or that he was all alone in the world. He also introduced Robbie to the internet, whereby he took him into his computer room that had many different computers. He taught Robbie how to use the internet and promised to give him a computer to carry back home with him. Robbie thought this was cool and that he had found a new friend that he could forever be in touch with. Robbie chose to take one of the tablets as it was light and would be easy for him to carry on his way back home, especially since he had to cross the narrow bridge on his way back. When Robbie's parents discovered that he was missing and had been away from home for over 3 days, they became worried and inquired of all the neighbors if they had seen him leave. Unfortunately, everyone reported that they had not seen or heard from him. So they waited, and on the 4th day, Robbie arrived back home, safe and sound, with a new surge of excitement to share with his family. He was so excited until he hardly took breaths in between his stories to his parents and grandparents about the wonderful, wise old friend he met in the nearby village. He explained that it was not anything like what everyone had been told, and that the old man was quite friendly and welcomed him to his village. On top of all of that, he reported with joy that the old man had given him this new piece of equipment called a computer with the internet. Of course, none of the villagers knew anything about this new toy and was curious to find out more. From that day on, there was a wonderful connection between Robbie's villagers and the old man living in the nearby village. They shared many great times, and no one ever feared leaving the village again. Robbie's courage brought 2 neighboring communities together that shared new interests and a connection to the outside world. The 2 village communities shared many fun Zoom meetings, and even found a way to widen the narrow bridge connecting the two communities, and would often visit the old man at the castle and enjoy fun festivities together. Courage is a big undertaking for most of us, but you will never reach new levels of interest in all the great things that lie ahead if you stay at your comfort level. So, be courageous, young men and women, as well as old men and women, and discover all the great things that lie ahead for you. This is how courage looks, big and strong. Strong kids eat lots of leafy green vegetables and fruits. With much love, I'll see you next time.